This is a real people business, and as much as I love AI and the predictive modeling and some of the things that we're seeing the TPAs put into their programs to identify that, I think that's huge.
Yeah.
They hit certain triggers.
You're listening to Beyond the Claim, the show for forward-thinking risk and claims professionals curious about the latest industry trends, winning strategies, and stories from influential leaders. Let's dive in.
Hello everyone, welcome to this episode of Beyond the Claim. I'm your host, Mark Cunningham from Broadspire. Today I have the pleasure of sitting with Kirk Leisure from the Cheesecake Factory. I'm sure a place that many have visited that are watching today. Thank you for being with us.
My pleasure.
And we are sitting today in the RIMS 2025 event in downtown Chicago, so couldn't ask for a better place nor time. Kirk, thank you for being with us. I was looking forward to the conversation today. As a frequent, probably too frequent, person that subscribes to your restaurants, I am curious what happens behind the scenes as your folks are always aggressively working to service patrons. But I know you cover really all lines, all ends in the risk management space. I am curious how that came to be. What's the background, the journey of Kirk? How did you get to this point?
Wow, it goes back over 35 years. I, like most people who got into the business in that time, 35 years ago, there wasn't really risk management as it's defined today. So it was sort of one of those things where I was thrown into it, nobody else really wanted to do it. We had claim files all over the office, and my manager said, hey, do you want to tackle this? Do you want to see if you can manage this claims process? And I said, of course, let me jump in. We had a guaranteed cost program, so but it was a small little restaurant company at the time. It wasn't the Cheesecake Factory, but different company. And I jumped in and loved it. We can build safety programs to prevent this litigation, and let's get in there and really try and tackle this and control something that was really identified as just a cost of doing business, and maybe didn't hit the profit line as much as it does or would today. So I jumped in and really just tackled it, loved it, built great relationships, had underwriter meetings, which had never been didn't ever occur before, and really just loved the fact that I could help predict where these claims were going and avoid the litigation and build, again, safety programs to prevent much of what we were seeing. And it really got the attention of senior leadership. And so I continued to grow in that role as we acquired restaurant chains. And then about 25 years ago, I made the move to the Cheesecake Factory and sort of rebuilt their program. And it's been a great journey. I love my job.
You mentioned the claim volume or the risk, the exposure being significantly less when you first started out. Why do you think that is the case? Besides the size of restaurants, but it seems like the ratio or the exposure rate is less, or was less at the time.
I think, going back 35 years ago, I don't think claims have matured. We're a California-based restaurant, and I don't think the friction in the workers' comp space was what it is today, especially in some venues like Southern California and Florida and New York and some other areas like that. So I think that sort of emerged with time, and we had to build our programs to manage that a little bit better. So I think when you look at just the cost of healthcare and now the mental health aspect of workers' comp claims, it's a real thing, and it's something we can put money to put a value on that we didn't back in the day. So I think it's just part of the world as we live in it, right? And a lot more attorneys are out there, though.
Well, speaking of that, and I know one point of friction that you have passion for is litigation, or litigation prevention, that is, I should say.
Correct.
I know you're doing some things industry-wide beyond the Cheesecake. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Sure. So a lot of our insurance carriers are concerned about runaway juries and excessive jury verdicts. And how do you manage that? So I belong to an organization where restaurant peers come together with our defense counsel, and we talk about trends and how to identify those claims that could end up in front of a jury, maybe get ahead of them, different types of techniques to mediate those through early, building a relationship with your insurance carrier early, even if it doesn't hit 50% of the retention, which is typically that trigger. But really have those conversations with your carrier and get everybody on the same team. You don't want to swap defense counsel as on the steps of trial. That's just not good for anybody, and sometimes carriers will do that. They'll say, I'm not comfortable with your defense team, we want you to use our attorneys. That conversation should have happened sometimes years prior. So it's important to build those relationships, find out what your peers are doing. Don't recreate the wheel if somebody else has it figured out, but I'm really big on networking. RIMS is a great venue for doing that as well, but this specific retail restaurant group where we sit down with our defense attorneys and really figure out what they're seeing from a trial perspective and what we need to do to, again, identify the bad claims and move toward resolution before it gets into the hands of 12 strangers, as they say.
And are you layering in a lot of technology in that identification process, or is it more just education and training and identifying the right people to manage the process?
I'd love to say there was technology that we were putting at it, but sometimes this is a real people business. And as much as I love AI and the predictive modeling and some of the things that we're seeing the TPAs put into their programs to identify that, I think that's huge. They hit certain triggers, it comes up, we need to give attention to this claim. Further down the road, it becomes more relationship driven. What do we know about plaintiff's counsel? What do we know about plaintiff? Is she going to be sympathetic in front of a jury? I'm not sure that AI is really picking up those little pieces yet. I think it's getting there, and I'm excited for that. I think the more tools we have, the better. Tools that allow us to read the jury, to have a shadow jury, watching the same trial at the same time and determining where that's going. Who's doing a better job on plaintiff side, defense side, and where is this claim? Is this really going to go bad? If so, let's settle it now before this trial's over and the jury predicts it or chooses it. So I think it's coming there. I'm really excited about the technology, and especially where you can say, gosh, it's hitting these triggers. We may put our best counsel on this, or you don't want to put your most aggressive defense attorney on the poor little old lady that slipped and fell, and probably not a good match. So there's a lot of art to it as well.
So we're slight pivot. We're 5 years post-pandemic. I think your industry, more than many, had to adjust on the fly in many different ways. How did that play out for the Cheesecake Factory, you in particular? What have you seen change dramatically since 2020 or 2020? I think that's when we started, right? 2019, I guess, for those of you that are very specific to how we identify the actual disease, but you get my point. How did the industry change?
So I don't know about the industry as much as how I changed.
Okay.
So we have an enterprise risk management program. Certainly pandemics were on there. A worldwide pandemic was very low on the list of probability. So the fact that we had something that was considered a black swan event and something that we didn't put a lot of resources to until we were in it, in my mind shift changed. So instead of looking backward to figure out what my next big risk is going to be, I'm now very much a forward thinker. Let's go back and look at those black swan events that we said will never happen and reevaluate those to see maybe they could happen. And are we prepared? Are there things that we can manage and get ahead of versus just saying, well, we can't manage this particular one. Cheesecake Factory was not going to be able to stop a worldwide pandemic as much as we would like to, but we hope get people through it though.
That is true.
But I think as I think about risk, it's very forward thinking and not historically driven like much of our industry still does. We still have underwriters to say, well, let's look backward to figure out what claims are going to look like moving forward, and it makes sense in a lot of cases. But I think an effective risk manager is now thinking forward. What could happen? What will be coming down? What does AI do? What are the positives? What are the negatives? What's the impact to our business? And how can we use it in a way that's smarter, predictive modeling and things along those lines? That's very forward thinking and not backward thinking. And I think that's what defines the next chapter of risk management and getting those thought leaders to think differently, not historically.
Expect the unexpected, be prepared for it well in advance. That's interesting. I know you have a lot of property responsibilities. as part of the lines that you cover. Clearly, Cheesecake Factory has got a lot of exposure nationally. What does that look like for you? Has there been change there with whether it be climate change, global warming, whatever have you, or just the expansion of the restaurant chain?
You know, it's interesting because our restaurants, many of our restaurants are built into malls. And if you look at the underwriters and the information they have, they don't necessarily see that. And they're thinking maybe a standalone restaurant on a corner in Miami Beach. So it's important for us to spend time with the underwriters, have them understand our business, how we're set up, almost location by location. What's that cat exposure look like? We can look historically at property claims and say, okay, when there's been a big hurricane that's come in, how did Cheesecake respond? How quickly were they back up and running? And we pride ourselves in our ability to get back up and running quickly. How do we do that? Well, when we know a hurricane's coming in, we engage our restoration company in to sandbag around vulnerable areas. We get with our food delivery company and we have them stage our food just outside the hurricane zone so that the first truck's moving in and we have food. We need electricity, right. But as long as we have electricity, we can cook your food and get it out to you, because a lot of times we get electricity before residential does.
Right.
So these poor folks need to eat and they're looking for food, and if we can get our restaurants up and running, serve the community back again during a time of natural disaster, we're there to do it. So it's been interesting, but the piece that's most effective is really having the underwriters understand how we do things, and that we're protected a little bit from the surrounding mall area, but it doesn't show up on the CAT modeling necessarily.
Right. Interesting. So a topic that's occurred in pretty much every meeting I've been in at this RIMS, and last year as well, but AI, topic du jour for sure. Do you see that influencing how you operate beyond the restaurant, but in particular, whether it be prevention or it be trend analysis, identification? Is it influencing your particular responsibilities yet, or do you anticipate it?
So yes and no. We've used AI significantly in our restaurants, and I'll just give you a great example. At the front desk, when you check into a Cheesecake Factory, and you want to know how long that wait's going to be, our front desk system does a virtual reality on every table to determine where they are in the ordering process. So did they just sit down? Are they on appetizers? Are they on entrees? Maybe they're just paying their bill. And
that's the person that's hovering around as we're eating.
It's the AI. It's our front desk system that knows from our point of sale system where you are in your dining process. So it can give you it's 37 minutes, because we know if we don't quote it accurately, it becomes a bad guest experience.
Absolutely.
From the food standpoint and how that food comes up, if you're ordering a salad and I have a steak, there are different cooking times for that. So it's not going to call for your food to be prepared until my steak is almost done, and then it fires up your salad, so your food's coming out together, and my steak's hot and your salad's cold,
right,
as it should be. So we use it all the time within our infrastructure, and I think our company is very progressive in that way. How we use it on the risk management program, certainly I'm looking at the impact to adjusters and the fact that the industry is still struggling with finding great adjusters coming into our business, and can we use AI to take some of the burden off of them so they're focused on the recovery of the injured employee and not burdened with going through 500 pages of medical bills. So I think AI has a place for that. I'm excited. I see that the TPAs are using it more than ever, and using it to help with the adjuster, just giving them a little bit more work-life balance and taking the pressure off of them in places where AI can come in and allow them to focus on the recovery of that injured employee and get them back to work.
Yeah, I think the right place for it has been as progressive and generative as the progression of just AI tools in general? I think last year, the year before that, when it was really rolling out from a large language model perspective, it was, okay, is there replacement? What does that look like? Well, that's not realistic. Is there augmentation? What does that look like? Well, maybe it needs to be very particular in where we augment the process to better align with the adjuster, how they operate, giving them more opportunities for efficiencies. And so you just see this progression of the application of the tool, to your point. And I think clearly we're in the early stages, so there's a long way to go. Last question for you. When you look back over your 35-year career plus or less, whatever that might be.
Around that number.
Around that. Are there any things you do differently? Do you see things where you recognize an opportunity now that you didn't back then, or that you wish as an industry that we took a different direction?
It's a great question, and as uncomfortable as it might be saying that I've made a lot of mistakes, I've learned from the mistakes I've made. And when I entered into risk management, it was in its early infancy. It really hadn't developed. I didn't have a lot of peers to network with and ask them how to do something. So I had to go down pathways that were not always successful. And I think even today, as I think of solutions that may not be an off-the-shelf solution for my risk, I go out there, I take chances, I take risks, try to develop my own type of program or a safety program specifically that might not work, or it might sound great on paper, but when we put it out into operating in a restaurant, it doesn't work. And I think that's made me stronger. I'm not afraid to make mistakes. I'm not afraid to take on challenges that are big, and I love to help the industry. I know what works in one of my very complicated restaurants could work for my peers in other concepts, and I'm happy to share that. And I think I'm sort of known for that. I don't compete on safety. If we can keep people healthy and safe and get them home to their families without injury, and I can share some of that with my peers so that their employees can also be effective that way, that's fantastic for everybody. And I think every goal of every risk manager, I would hope.
That's fantastic. Really appreciate your time. Thank you for being an advocate in the industry.
My pleasure.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Beyond the Claim.
You've been listening to Beyond the Claim, a podcast for risk and claims leaders. To ensure you never miss an episode, please subscribe to the show in your favorite podcast player. If you use Apple Podcasts, we'd love for you to give us a quick rating for the show. Just tap the number of stars that you think the podcast deserves. Until next time, stay curious and keep innovating.